evil one shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, and times, and the dividing of time. Grace and peace, Brother Sean here with another lesson. This lesson is called The Revelation of the True Scriptural Clock. And what you see before you is the true orientation of how our clocks should actually be. So let's get into this. Now when we're looking at this understanding, we're dealing with 12 hours in the night, 12 hours in the day, which is the first original day. And we teach that darkness was first and light was second, therefore having the evening or the night being first and the morning and daylight period being second. 12 hours for each season this way. So when we're looking at this understanding, I just want to let you know that right after the bat, we deal with darkness, night, and evening being first, and then the morning coming after. So there'll be 12 hours of darkness first, then there's 12 hours of light, so to speak, on an average basis. We don't say that the light was first. So we know that there are many people that teach that light, day, and morning were first, and that morning and the evening was how it was set out. But the scriptures say the evening and the morning were the first day. It never says that the morning and the evening are the first day. So what you see below in terms of 24-hour days beginning with the light period first, we don't agree with at all, and we teach greatly that this is a wrong teaching, but we're not going to do that in this lesson. In this lesson, I want to make sure you have an understanding of the 24-hour day and the two 12-hour cycles and when they begin. So we're going to have here basically utilizing our clock 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. as well for the beginning of both the darkness period and the light period. We can see on the left, darkness, evening, and night were first, and that's dealing with the first 24-hour day. So we'll have 12 hours of darkness first. 12 a.m. or midnight is 6 hours into it, and that's considered midnight. And we'll talk about that soon. Then after, when the Most High said, let there be light, we have light, morning in the daylight period, also of 12 hours, having 12 p.m. be midday as well. So the beginning of the 24-hour day cycle as we teach it, the first hour would be 7 p.m. and days begin and end at 6 p.m. for 24 hours. 12 hours each. So we have to stay educated and learn to know. And again, I want to bring you some great understanding of the true scriptural clock, which is actually Jah's true clock. John 11:9 reads, Jahoshua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth because there is no light in him. So many people, when they talk about time frames and what a day is, they look at this verse here and say right off the bat, well, there's only 12 hours for the day. And they think that that's what an official day is when you're dealing with days and dates. But it's actually just the 12 hours of the daylight part. And even verse 10 goes on to let us know that there's a nighttime part of the 24-hour day, which is 12 hours. Now, whether he's speaking about what comes first or second here has no bearing on the actual 24-hour day, because he wasn't really speaking about what a day is, but more speaking about prophetical time frames regarding himself and when he's gone. So again, are there not 12 hours in the day? John 11 reads that. Now I know when many people speak about this understanding, they first come out and say, well, you know what? The Messiah said these words at the spring equinox or the spring equilux, because that's the time when you have equal night and equal day. It was referring to that time period. But that's actually very, very wrong. It's incorrect. What he's referring to is just that there's 12 hours of daylight in terms of average daylight, in terms of minutes and days in the year, no matter what country that you go in. Doesn't matter if you go to Antarctica, the North Pole, Jerusalem, Africa, South America, Australia, up into the East and China, there will always be 12 hours in the daylight period when you're looking at it on average. So when dealing with Jerusalem here, I just want to look at this, and I like to use Jerusalem time and Israel time when I'm talking about scriptural understandings of time frames. We have the longest day and the shortest day. The longest day is 14 hours and 5 minutes, which would be around the summer solstice, and the shortest day would be 9 hours and 55 minutes at the winter solstice, which again is 24 hours, and that gives you an average of 12 hours for daylight, day-night, if you want to call it that way, the nighttime. You can see when you add these together, it gives us 24. And even though the night might be longer or shorter here and the day longer than 12 hours, we're looking at average. And this affects the whole earth. So we have here average sunlight hours and average daylight hours, and I'm going to show you a chart down below. Now, average sunlight hours is not something that's really official, because that's just talking about, if it's cloudy or not. It's not talking about sunrises and sunsets. But when you're dealing with sunrise and sunsets, that's the average daylight hours and minutes, which is important to this understanding this topic of hours. So we can see utilizing the Gregorian year from January to December, when it's going to be talking about sunlight hours, it's 9 hours and 29 minutes. And again, that's dealing with cloudiness and all of that. But the average daylight hours is which concerns us, sunrise times and sunset times. You can see going throughout the year, even though there's different amounts of time, the average is going to be 12. And like I said, this is going to be anywhere you want to go on the earth. Right? Anywhere you go on earth, it's always going to be 12, even if days are shorter at some times of the year and longer at other times of the year in terms of daylight. You can go to a website called timeanddate.com, and there you can search out, like I said, any country you want. So if you're speaking about the North Pole, or even so far as Antarctica, and I know that there's times there that for 3 months the sun doesn't rise, and for 3 months it doesn't set that way, so you have like 3 months of darkness and then 3 months of light, so to speak. But when you average these out throughout the whole year, again, no matter where you go, it will always be 12 hours, because that's how it works out. That's what the Messiah was talking about. And you can do this research on your own, for I've checked it all out, and every single country on earth has an average of 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. It's a fact. This chart here utilizes Jerusalem time frames and Jerusalem climate and all that pertains to the agricultural seasons as they pertain to the scriptures. And we begin our year always in February, because that's the true timing of the true scriptural year. But what we want to look at here is the amount of daylight hours. You can see from February going through to January, it's covering a 12-month period. And in this period, there's various amounts of daylights throughout the year. But again, when you average these out and you start to work it up, you add up all the hours of daylight and we get 144 hours. That's adding from 11 plus 12 plus 13, so on and so forth. It'll give you 144. And of course, 144 divided by 12 is 12. So you divide by 12 months and the average yearly daylight is 12 hours. And I'm using Jerusalem here, but this will give you a good example. And it's the same with any country that you want to utilize. Now let's look at the common clock here. This is what we see every day. This is what is used throughout the whole world, this 12-hour clock. Now the 12 hours is correct, but the utilization of this clock for days and dates is very suspect, and it's very confusing. And to get to the point, it's of the devil's devices. So let's take a look here. So we know that at 12 o'clock, the top period at 12, that's usually when you have midnight or middle of the night. Now, when we say midnight, that means it's that you know that it's the middle of the night. So that means there must be, in this 12-hour cycle, there must be a beginning of the night and an ending of the night. The beginning of the night would truly be at 6 p.m. and then 6 hours later, that should be midnight, and then 6 hours after would be the last of that 12-hour sequence, 12 being midnight. And this is also goes for midday as well. But this is all suspect and it's wrong, because why is it called midnight? It's called midnight, and then they're going to start their 24-hour day and date here at midnight, right? So let's think about this. First of all, let's say 11:59. 11:59 before 12 p.m. It turns 12 a.m., which is now the beginning of a 24-hour period in this weird modern cycle, but it's also the beginning of the morning, because 12:01, so to speak, would be 12:01 in the morning, even though they call 12 midnight. So 1 minute after 12 is going to be morning. Well, if it's the middle of night, that can't make any sense. And even if it's middle night and it's going to be morning 1 minute after 12, and then for the next 6 hours it's going to be completely dark. I mean, come on, we know morning deals with light. And this is a suspect thing, to say the least, much less when we get to dates. Evening and morning are not recognized as the beginnings. So 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. is the beginning of the night and the morning. That will give you, of course, 12 being the middle of the day or the middle of the night. But with this confusing thing, 24-hour dates begin here, and they begin 1 minute into the morning, so to speak. And then it changes from nighttime to morning in 1 minute, and that makes no sense at all. this clock here is really corrupted that way. 12:01 is the morning. Makes no sense. Let's take a look. We had Babylon's clock. Their 24-hour day begins in the middle of the night, like I said right here. And this is false, because the evening and morning are not recognized. But we look at the scriptural clock. Jah's 24-hour day begins in the beginning of the night. You'll start to see something different here. You'll notice that we flip this clock not upside down, but right side up. So what we see in the middle is the correct scriptural time frames of the hours. 6 p.m. it's really the 12th hour. The first hour would be 7 p.m. rather than 1 o'clock. And time starts from here. Then when we get to the middle up top, it's midnight or midday, and we continue going on for the rest of the half of that midnight or midday until that comes to a close, and then the next 12-hour cycle begins. So you see on this clock here, this is more oriented to the true scriptural time frames. On the outside is the modern Roman time frames, just to give you an idea of how they switch things. So for example, the third hour of the night or the evening, right, or even the morning, if you wanted to say, would be equivalent to 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. And this is when the second watch begins, and we'll talk about what watches are in a moment. So we're going to get an understanding of the scriptural hours of the night season or the night period, and the daylight season or the day period. I want to let you understand that there's a 12-hour night season, and as I was been showing you before, the first hour is equivalent to 7 p.m., the second hour is equivalent to 8, the third to 9, the fourth to 10, so on and so forth. The sixth hour is equivalent to 12 a.m. as you call it in the night or midnight, and then the seventh hour, as they call it, 1 a.m., 1 in the morning, but it's still a part of the night season. And you have the rest here. And then at the end of the 12th hour, or when it gets to 6 a.m. in the morning, then we have the light season beginning from the morning. And then the first hour would be 7 a.m., second hour 8 a.m., the third hour 9, so on and so forth. We get to the sixth hour of the daylight part, and that's 12 midday. And appropriately called because it's the middle of the day, it's the sixth hour, and the middle of 12 is 6. So midnight and midday should be the sixth hour. And you'll notice that the ninth hour, equivalent to 3 p.m., is also what we call the hour of prayer. And we'll talk about this. It's very important. So again, I want you to utilize this understanding here as we look at a 24-hour day. This is full 24 hours. The first half is 12 hours long, just like how we have our clock up here. 12 a.m. is midnight. 5 a.m. is the 11th hour. 6 a.m. would be the 12th hour. And then we have light, morning, and day. And we have the same understanding as well for another 12 hours. So we only need one clock to show us two 12-hour periods in a 24-hour day. But notice that the days begin in the evening, or 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. For the morning up top right as well. So 6 p.m. begins your 24-hour day and nighttime. 12 hours later, it's 6 a.m. begins the morning, and that goes for 12 hours until we go right back to the night again, the evening. 24-hour day period. So let's look at the night hours and how they're scripturally recognized, because I know many people say they never counted hours in the night, but in the scriptures, the Holy Bible, that's what I see that hours were counted. Acts 23 verse 23, it reads, "And he called unto him 2 centurions, saying, Make ready 200 soldiers to go to Caesarea, and horsemen 70, and spearmen 200, at the third hour of the night," which would be equivalent to 9 p.m. or the beginning of the second watch. So we see indeed that hours are counted in the nighttime. As opposed to below, look at the third hour of the day. Acts 2:15. "For these are not drunken as ye suppose, seeing it is but the third hour of the day," which would be 9 a.m., the second watch, the day watch time. So we have above, we have the third hour of the night, which is 9 p.m. Then we have the third hour of the day below, which is 9 a.m. Again, giving you an understanding about these two 12-hour cycles, one for the night period and one for the daylight period. So when we look at these time frames on our chart here, the evening again is beginning 6 p.m. The first hour is 7 p.m. Then we have the third hour that we just read. That would be equivalent to 9 p.m. Here's our midnight again, and we go on through it. We have morning. And this again is covered in this 12-hour clock that you see to the right as well. As the first hour is 7 p.m., You notice it's the first hour is equivalent to 7 p.m. here, the second hour to 8 p.m., third, fourth, going all the way around for 12 hours. So the clock and this chart work hand in hand. Now I want to get into the 4 night watches, since we're still focusing on the nighttime. And you'll see that the first watch here begins 6 p.m. or the 12th hour, goes for 3 hours. Then you have the second watch for 3 hours. You have the third, 3 hours. You have the fourth, and that last one is for 3 hours. We get back into morning. So let's see this in the scripture. Lamentations 2:19, it reads, "Arise, cry out in the night, in the beginning of the watches. Pour out thine heart like water before the face of Jah." So we can see here we have the beginning of the watches at night, and we know nighttime begins at 6 p.m. And even if there's some light there the year throughout the seasons, it's still 6 p.m. that we govern things by, and that's the beginning of watches. Now the beginnings of the 4 scriptural night watches are divided as such. The first watch is from the first hour to the third hour, or 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The second watch is from the third hour to the sixth hour, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. or midnight. The third watch is from the sixth hour or ninth hour, which is from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. And the fourth watch is from the ninth hour to the 12th hour, 3 a.m. till 6 a.m. Luke 12:38 reads, "And if he shall come in the second watch, which is the third hour, 9 p.m., or come in the third watch, which is the sixth hour, midnight or 12 a.m., and find them so, blessed are those servants." Matthew 14:25 reads, "And in the fourth watch of the night, which is the ninth hour, 3 a.m., Jahoshua went unto them walking on the sea." So looking at these 2 verses, we get the second watch, we get the third watch, and we have the fourth watch to let us know that these are scriptural time frames. So as we look at it again on our scriptural clock, Jah's times, the first watch beginning at 6, which is really from here to 12, going through 1, 2, 3. Then the second watch begins, 1, 2, 3. The third watch begins, 1, 2, 3. The fourth watch begins, 1, 2, 3. The fourth watch ends, and the first one would begin. This is how it's utilized on Jah's clock, as well as you have the modern time frames on the outside in white, just to help you bring an understanding and make this connection. Mark 13 verse 35. "Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at evening, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch." So we have these time frames marked out. Evening, which you should be knowing now, should be the first watch, or 6 p.m. Then we have midnight, which is the middle of the night, the 6th hour of the night. The cock crowing is going to be the 9th hour. You'll see that going from 3 a.m. till the morning time. And of course, morning is 6 a.m. sunrise. So at evening, as I just said, the first hour, 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. At midnight is the 6th hour, 12 a.m. The third watch begins. At the cock crowing, which is the 9th hour, or 3 a.m. is the fourth watch. Or in the morning, the 12th hour of the night, or 6 a.m. So with these verses here, we can understand also these things are timings at the Most High's watches. The only thing that's missing here is the second watch, but everything else is in sequence. And you should know that roosters, they crow anytime between the 9th hour, 3 a.m., and the 12th hours, before or even at sunrise or dawn. This is a natural phenomena, and they always do this throughout the world. And it's a great marker, and this is why the Messiah uses it in the scriptures. So looking at a 12-hour night cycle and the 4 night watches, we have the first watch beginning at 6 p.m. or the 12th hour. We have the second watch beginning at the 3rd hour. The third watch beginning at midnight or the 6th hour. The fourth watch beginning at the morning watch. All of these are utilized in our 12-hour night cycle, as you can see, and we're comparing it as well to the modern Gregorian hours. Now at the 9th hour, or the 4th watch, 3 a.m., this is when the rooster crows. They'll be crowing during this whole period from 3 a.m. or from the 9th hour to the 12th hour. Roosters will be crowing anytime during those times. And again, you can see this is when morning begins at the 12th hour. As well, looking at our clock at the top right, utilizing the same time frames so you can match these up and make that connection. So let's look at the scriptural 12-hour daylight cycle now, utilizing our scriptural clock or Jah's clock. Acts chapter 2 verse 15. For these are not drunken as you suppose, seeing it is but the third hour of the day, 9 a.m. Acts 3 verse 1. Now Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour, which is 3 p.m. or the 4th day watch. And this is good to know, this hour of prayer. I want to speak about it. I do believe that the world is hiding this hour of prayer. They don't want us to know about it. And although, not knowing about it doesn't make us sinners, but I do believe that if we move into certain understandings, we might find an advantage for us as believers in these end times. Verse 9. On the morrow, as they went out on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And that's 12 p.m. or we'd call midday. Verse 30. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting unto this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. And we know that is an angel as well. So we have Peter talking about the 6th hour. He was on the rooftop praying. We have Cornelius praying around the 9th hour he's talking about, which would be, of course, 3 on our clock. Mark 15 verse 25 it reads, and it was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him. So the Messiah was first went up on the stake or the pole at the 3rd hour, which was equivalent to 9 a.m. And when the 6th hour, 12 p.m., midday, was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, which would be till 3 p.m. And at the 9th hour, Jahoshua cried with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is being interpreted, my El, why hast thou forsaken me? So notice that he gives his last words at the 9th hour, which is also the hour of prayer. So as we look at this on our 12-hour daylight cycle chart, and of course we have at the top right, the 12-hour clock, utilized the same way. Morning, again, the 1st hour equal to 7 a.m. That's 2nd watch, the 3rd hour, 9 a.m. The 3rd watch, the 6th hour, 12 p.m. And the 4th watch, the 9th hour, 3 p.m. And we learned that there was the hour of prayer. And we're going to see that the number 11th hour is also going to be mentioned. And we're going to have the 12th hour, which is 6 p.m. equivalent to evening. So this is how the full 12-hour day cycle looks and how it goes. And all these hours are mentioned in our Holy Scriptures. Now I want to talk about noon. As you look up this word noon, it says it's the middle of the day, 12 o'clock in the daytime, or the time or point at which the sun crosses the local meridian. And they call it the noon sun. Poetically, it means the highest, brightest, or most important part. But the origin of this word is very vital for our understanding. It comes from the Old English non, from Latin Nona, Hora, which means the 9th hour. You can see it, noon, the 9th hour, originally 3 p.m., the 9th hour from sunrise. So this is the thing I'm trying to teach here, bring an understanding when we're counting hours in the day and we're looking at noon. For the most part, many people teach that noon to be midday because it's actually been transformed that way. But it was never like that originally. Noon stood for the 9th hour. And I want to prove that and just show you a little bit of history on this understanding. You see, the word noon is derived from the Latin Nona Hora, the 9th hour of the day, and is related to the liturgical term non, the 9th hour of prayer. And even though this is talking about Roman Catholicism, they're taking their cue from the ancient Israelites that way, because the 9th hour was the hour of prayer according to the Israelites in the Scriptures. The Roman and Western European medieval monastic day began at the equinox by 6 a.m. modern timekeeping. So the 9th hour started at what is now 3 p.m. So like I've been saying about the 6 p.m. being the beginning of a true 12-hour period, or 6 a.m. as well, or the 24-hour day for that matter, you can see that it was also understood anciently in Europe as well. Now we're not following European traditions or anything, but we're just kind of going through letting you know that, hey, there's tampering here with this word noon. In English, the meaning of the word shifted to midday, and the time gradually moved back to 12 local time, that is, not taking into account the modern invention of time zones. So you notice there was a shifting here. They moved the word noon, which meant the 9th hour, they moved it back to the 12th hour. Now, for what reason, it doesn't really say, but one thing I do know that it shouldn't have been shifted at all. This change began in the 12th century or the 1300s and was fixed by the 14th century or the 1500s. So this is why the word noon, when we see it even in the 1611 King James Version or most English versions, it's going to be referring to the midday because the change had already taken place. But originally it was for the 9th hour. Looking at this word nones, the 5th or 7th canonical hours of the service or the service for it, originally fixed for the 9th hour of the day or 3 p.m. The 9th hour of the day. So it would be right here. This would be the 9th hour of the day from the morning and is equivalent to 3 p.m. as you can see. But this word nones is supposed to be referring again to 9. Psalms 55:17 reads, "Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice." So here we have the evening time, which will be 6 p.m., the morning time around 6 a.m. And again, doesn't mean it has to be the exact hour. We're just giving an average understanding here and speaking generally. And at noon would also be the 9th hour, which as we know is a time of prayer. Now, they could be using it in this context as midday. You can pray anytime you want. We're supposed to pray without ceasing. But I'm just bringing forth an understanding that, again, there's been a tampering with this word noon. Acts 3:1. Now Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour, the noon hour, right? Notice it's called the hour of prayer in regards to the temple. And if it's the 9th hour, they're counting these hours from the beginning of the morning at 6 a.m. Acts 10 verse 30. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. So even Cornelius was praying at the 9th hour, and he remembered that particular because that would be a custom for many Israelites to do. Again, if you didn't do it, didn't mean you were sinning, but it was a great custom during this time period. And I think it's also at the temple at the 9th hour of the day, the temple would be open to the public for them to come and bring forth their prayers to the Most High. So the 9th hour here is supposed to be noon. Again, we're looking at all our hours and whatnot, and we have midday, and then we have our focus is here 3 p.m. prayer, noon. This is that time. If you want to, you can start to try to do this, and for some people it might be hard to do this because, first of all, you won't remember, you'll always forget. And again, it's not sin if you don't do it. That is something to know. Now, around the 1500s, this word noon, 9, wrongly was associated with the word midday, yet midday was always 12 o'clock p.m. And before that time, the word noon was always 3 o'clock p.m., the 9th hour from sunrise. The Latin Nona, Hora, 9th hour of daylight by Roman and ecclesiastical reckoning was about 3 p.m. The slow shift from 3 p.m. to 12 p.m. began during the 1300s, and various explanations are given for it, such as unreliability of medieval timekeeping devices and the seasonal elasticity of the hours of daylight in northern regions. Whatever the cause, the meaning changed from the 9th hour, and they changed it to the 6th hour, and it seems to have been completed by the 1500s. That's right. And for this paragraph here, when I'm talking about seasonal elasticity, it's because, as we know, the sun is out shorter during winter times, and it's out longer during the summer times. And so for some people, keeping straight hours might be challenging, and they will shift the hours all around. For this lesson and this understanding, all the hours will remain the same despite exactly when the sun will rise or set throughout the seasons of the year. So I just wanted to give some more information about this 9th hour. I looked up the word the 9th hour, which equals 3 p.m. But notice what it says here. It says 9th, and then the division is the 9th hour corresponds to our 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And also the word used noon again. For the 6th hour of the Jews coincides with the 12th of the day as divided by our method. And the 1st hour of the day is 6 a.m. to us. Matthew 20 reads down low, verse 5. Again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour and did likewise. So we can see this understanding of the 6th and 9th hour according to scripture, what it would be on our modern clock. This is why Jah's True Scriptural Clock I find is very important, and it'll get you orientated into Jah's true times. Let's move on. Matthew chapter 20 verse 1 reads, For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is in a householder, which went out early in the morning, now that we have this understanding, 6 a.m., to hire laborers into his vineyard. So he's going out early in the morning, at the 6th hour, between 6 and 7, which is the first hour. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Now this penny for the day is for the 12-hour daylight period. And he went out about the 3rd hour, 9 a.m., and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. So now that you have this understanding, the 3rd hour would be 9 a.m. Again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour and did likewise, which we know is 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. The hour of prayer is the 9th hour. And about the 11th hour, which is 5 p.m., he went out and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? And they say unto him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall ye receive. So again, I want us to see all these various understandings of the hours in the scriptures and what they pertain to. Now let's look at our chart again. We have went out early in the first morning, which is from 6 till 7, right? Then he says he went out there also in the 3rd hour, and it says that he went there in the 6th and 9th hours, and also that he went out there the 11th hour, right? That's what it says, the 11th hour. And we know again, the 6th hour is midday, and the hour of prayer, and 6 p.m. is the evening. But let's finish off this read. There's a little bit more I want to bring to your understanding regarding the 11th hour going into the evening, because many people say that evening is maybe around 3 p.m., but that's not so. Evening is the ending of a 12-hour day and the beginning of a new one in the nighttime. Verse 8, So when evening was come, 6 p.m., the master of the vineyard saith unto his steward, Call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, and we're saying again it's 5 p.m., which is correct, they received every man a penny. Now I want you to notice here that it says when evening came, I'm saying it's 6 p.m. because that's going to be basically the 12th hour. So some may argue and want to say, well, no, it could be any time. We're just making it up. But we know that this evening comes after the 11th hour. Let's take a look. Verse 10, But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, saying, These last have wrought or worked but 1 hour. Remember, they were hired at the 11th hour, and the evening is 6 p.m. So the 11th hour is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's 1 hour, confirming our 12-hour day. And thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and heat of the day. So again, when we go back to looking at our time periods, we can see that on the 12-hour clock, Jah's true clock, we have, again, from the morning, 6 a.m., and it says he went out at the 3rd hour, which is the second watch, and it says he went out at the 6th and 9th hours, and he also went out at the 11th hour, and then they worked for 1 hour, which was evening. This should be clear and obvious what's going on. I hope you can see this understanding. See, these are the day watch times. So as we conclude, Babylon's clock and their 24-hour day beginning in the middle of the night and dates is scripturally erroneous. It's of the devil and shouldn't be that way at all. And even though we live in this world, we have to utilize, their clock. Now that you know Jah's true scriptural clock and that Jah's 24-hour day begins in the beginning of the night, this should help us further, bring an understanding to Jah's true times and the scriptural clock. This is much more clean and true to the Holy Scriptures than Babylon's clock on the right. And again, this is the double, flipping things upside down, switching it around so that we get confused in time. And you can see this is quite diabolical. So we see before you is the true scriptural clock, and you can actually purchase this at our shop, the education shop. And if you go there, you can get this clock with borders of black, gold or beige, wood, and also white. But it's going to help you orient yourself into the true scriptural times. And I would encourage everyone to get one, for this is a beautiful understanding and one that I do believe is going to help us as we move forward into the future to reveal Jah's true scriptural calendar. For everything that we have works together, even starting from the clock going through to years. Praise Jah. So again, my name is Brother Sean from the Zion Assembly of Jah and Jahoshua. Always tune into our lessons every Sabbath with here myself and Brother Javed as we speak about many scriptural topics to strengthen and exhort all the people of the Most High. And our lessons begin at 5:30 till 7 p.m. And during this time, you're going to get strong scriptural information. One love. Thank you for listening to this whole lesson. Feel free to subscribe, and in the description below you can find the link to the True Scriptural Clock if you want to purchase one. Bless up, one love in the Messiah's name, to the Father's glory. Praise Jah.
Tick tock, time keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking. Into the future, the prophecy was written, written, written. From beginning to end, day 1 to day 7, 7, 7. Then a new cycle begins, new earth, a new heaven.